My name is Lee Fanwick. I'm interviewing Gloria Lederman today on June 14th, the Jewish Historical Society. And Lester Charlack is our video man. He's going to record this all for the Jewish Archives. Gloria, we want to thank you for allowing us to do this because this will become a part of Stanford Jewish history in our archives.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tell me, Gloria, where did your parents come from and what made them come to this country?
Well, my mother came from Poland, but Poland had more than one territory. There was Austria, and there was Poland, and there was several other areas. And so on the birth certificate, they basically put down Poland. My father came also from Poland, but from a very small village called Monastrzyska. Don't ask me how to spell it, but that's where he came from. My mother came to the United States in 1917, and my father came in 1920.
Gloria, do you think where they came from was called Galicia?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
No,
Okay.
that I don't know. My father came here sponsored by my Uncle Dave, who lived in Stanford, who had come many years earlier. And he had him go to Boston, where he landed, and met him there and took him by train to Stanford, where he stayed with my Uncle Dave. The reason he wanted him here was because he had a horse and he had a wagon, and he was a peddler and sold needles and threads and fabric, and he would go through the streets selling this, and he needed someone to steer that horse. And that lasted about a year, and my father wanted to have something on his own, and he went to Brooklyn to a university. Well, it wasn't it was a trade school, and it was called, I have to find it. Can I stop that film, or am I going to read it?
Sheet Metal and Trades Art School.
Yes, Sheet Metal and Arts School, and he graduated from there and decided he would start a shop in Stanford doing metal ceilings in restaurants and stores. And then he found that skylights were very popular, and they specialized in skylights at the school. So he went into doing skylights too, and then from there, in about 1925, he opened his own business roofing, because he thought that was going to be big. In fact, during the Second World War, in fact, I had a badge, I forgot to bring it. He would go to Bridgeport, where there was ammunition factories, and he had a special badge that he had to wear. And sometimes he would take me just for the ride, because it was like being out of town, and I was a little girl, and I would sit in the car for 2-3 hours while he went into the building, because I wasn't allowed to go in. But that was the biggest deal for me,
Right.
and he enjoyed that. My mother came here, like I said, in 1917.
How old was she?
She was probably close to 11, probably maybe 8. And she didn't do anything.
Who did you come with?
She came with 2 sisters out of 5. There were 5 of them. And she came with Aunt Essie, which was the youngest, and Aunt Clara, which was the next one up from my mother. And they lived in the Lower East Side. And
Did you ever hear what street they lived on?
no, I have no idea. And her mother was here already, and she took in a boarder, which was my father, because he wasn't going to commute every day. And he picked my mother out of the 5 sisters, and that's how that started. And when my mother came here, after a year here, she went to school. So she was 11, and they put her in kindergarten.
You know which school she went to?
No, it was also on the Lower East Side. And she stayed there for 1 year, just to learn the language and be able to write. And she quit, and then she went into a sweat house to work on a sewing machine, where they made sweaters and things like that. And she worked there until she actually got married. So that was in fact, she did make hats, and she did other things in that factory.
Where did they get married?
They got married in Manhattan. And then Dad bought a garage on Holly Place
You're in Stanford?
in Stanford, and started a company. And this was off Main Street, off Atlantic Street, near the Big Chief, near Mitchell's, and it was down an alleyway, I remember it. And then he went, I don't even know what the street was called then, but another street where there were two entrances. It was like storefronts. So there was one front here, one the gypsies lived in, and one my dad had his shop. And I was told, well, you see the red curtain, you don't go in that door. You only go in the plain door, that's where Daddy's going to be. And I can remember going in there, and there was a potbelly stove and a brake, and this was his, with the desk, everything in this one garage. And he had one man that worked for him, Solly. It was a bachelor, lived nearby, and that's where he worked. But when he was in Europe, before he came here, as a little boy, his father owned a farm. They said he traded horses, and the family always laughed when he said that, and I never understood it. But he did have one horse, which my father would take around the mill where they would do wheat, and that wheat was barley, and it was used for kasha, and he would sell that to the farmers, and that's what he did there until he was,
That was
late
also,
teens.
that was in Stanford?
No, that was in Europe.
Oh, that was in
That
Europe?
was in Europe. And my mother's father was a furrier in Europe, and he was still a furrier here, and one of her brothers, also an Uncle Dave, went into the furrier business for his whole life. And my mother got her first mink coat from that uncle.
Where was that?
That was in Manhattan, in the Fur District. And they lived in the Bronx.
Fur District is about 32nd Street.
Probably, yeah. And then Mother moved, they rented a house across from Stark School. And Mother became pregnant.
Was Stark School where it is today?
Yes, and I went to that school too. The whole family has gone there. I was going to talk to you about that.
About your mother becoming pregnant.
My mother became pregnant, and her sisters found out, of course, and they said, well, you can't have the baby in Stanford. It's a hick town. There won't be a decent doctor there. You have to come for the last 2 months and live with us in the Bronx. They lived on 207th Street all their life. And and you have to stay 2 months after, because there'll be no one to take care of you there. And that's what she did when my brother Nathan was born. My twin brother and I were born in Stanford in 1932. And that's the old Stanford Hospital.
Where was the old Stanford Hospital?
Right where it is now.
Oh, okay.
There's still parts of it that are there. Yeah.
Who delivered you?
Dr. Nemoyton, and I was 3 pounds, and my brother was close to 8, and they didn't have incubators then, and they would take a lamp and put a big shade on it and wrap you up and put the baby on the shade. And that's how I survived. I didn't go home for a month or 2 till I was, you had to be 5 pounds or whatever. And then I've been in Stanford ever since. Yeah.
You talked about the gypsies. Was there anything interesting about them?
Well, no, because I wouldn't dare even look in that direction. I was told, you don't go anywhere near that, the gypsies live in there. And I said, okay, if that's what your mother says, that's what you do.
Nathan Godfrey was your brother.
Nathan is my brother. He lives in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He was a professor at LSU. He went to Antioch College. He went to Columbia. He was in the Marines. And then he moved to Louisiana, to Baton Rouge.
Is he still alive?
He's just retired a couple of years ago, yes.
And
And Sydney, my twin, lives in San Francisco. He was a high school teacher. He taught English and English literature and history. And he's retired also for quite a while now. He's still living in San Francisco in Mill Valley.
it was your uncle who had the dry goods store?
Uncle Dave, yes. It was right near Silverman's furniture store, very big store. He was right next door, and there was Pickwick. There was a Pickwick store that you could get ice cream and sundaes in. That was very popular there. G&G was a you'd get your shoes
Was that
fixed.
on Main Street?
That was on Main Street too. And there were some theaters in the area too that don't exist anymore. The Plaza, the Stratford, and there was another one, the Rialto. Forget about it.
All gone.
They're gone, long time. Yeah.
When your mother came here, she worked in a sweater factory?
In a sweatshop.
Sweatshop.
Yes, yes, yeah.
It wasn't the Triangle Shirt Factory,
I have no idea.
yeah.
I have
That
no
was,
idea.
that's a famous one.
Really?
Yeah, that was where there was a terrible fire and,
Oh, really? No, I don't think that was the one. Unless she was out of it by then.
yeah.
That could be.
I guess that was the early 1900s.
Yes, probably was.
And
Yeah.
you went to Stark School?
Went to Stark School, then I went to Burdick Junior High, where they had a boys' entrance and a girls' entrance. You just didn't go in the same entrance, but the classes were mixed. And then from there, I went to Cherry Lawn, which was a private high school in Darien. And I graduated from there, and then I went to Collegiate Institute, which was a business school, and then I worked for a
Where was
insurance. That was in Manhattan. Then I worked for an insurance company for a year, and then I met Abe, and we were married in 1954. And then Abe came into the business of Annie Gottfried Inc. And
What did he do before he came into the business?
before he was in the business, he was a traveling salesman for stockings. And he met me through a relative who said, "Oh, I have a niece that lives in Stamford, and you go up to Westport. Why don't you give her a call, and maybe you'll get along." And that's how we met. Yes,
That was
1954 was when I got married. Met in '53.
um,
And then I had Jeffrey, who passed away in 1955, and then Linda, who is 1957, and then David in 19. I'd have to look it up. Hold on a minute. I should have it. Maybe I don't. Graduated, Nathan was born in 1928, and he went to Stanford High School, and he went up to the University of Connecticut in New London, and then on to Columbia. He was in UConn for only 1 year, then he went to Columbia, and then he went into Antioch, where you go to school for 3 months, and then you work for 3 months. And he graduated there, went into the Marines and so forth. Now Sydney graduated in 1950 when I graduated. And he went to Oregon,
where?
University of Oregon.
Oh, okay.
And then he took his Oregon State, yeah, and then he went into the Army. And actually, when he was in the Army, he was stationed overseas, and he went to one of the oldest church shuls in Prague. And somehow or other, my older brother told me that that was one of the shuls that my mother's family went to at one time. So that was very interesting, and he went there. And
Do you remember shopping on Pacific Street as a child?
I can remember, not just as a child, but I can remember buying fresh killed chickens on Pacific Street and buying my shoes Also on Pacific Street, there was a shoe store. I can't remember the name. And Rimlands, that's right, Rimlands. And getting shoes there, and even for my kids, I got shoes there. They were in existence for a long time.
Who owned the chicken store?
I don't know, but I only did it because my mother said, this is what you do. Because I could, and I would never pick them out either, because she said, pick out a good one. I said, I can't pick out chickens. You just do your best, I would tell the salesman. You do your best, and then I would come back for them later, but I never liked to do that. Yeah.
Well, what other shopping was on Pacific Street?
There was a grocery store, but I don't remember the name. Myers? Or
Angers?
Angers, maybe that was it.
That was a dairy store, wasn't it?
Yes.
There
And Brazel the butcher.
were a couple of butchers on.
Well, my mother used Brazel because she was kosher
Okay.
for a while. Yeah. And I remember during the Second World War, putting up the black drapes on all the windows and having someone come by with a whistle if they saw a crack of light coming through. And on your cars, half of your front lights were blackened out so that there would be a reflection of your lights when planes would come overhead. And I remember the air raid warnings that we would have when we were kids.
Have you been active in any organizations?
Well, I'm a life member of Hadassah, but being in business, I find that it's enough to go to business and get home and just have my weekends free. And so I really haven't done much. I did some work, like I said, with Hadassah many years ago, where we would type. We had special typewriters for the blind, or visually handicapped, and I would go up to the old Jewish Center, and when I had time, I would go up and type a couple of pages, and then it would be put into books, which was I felt that was something worth doing, yes.
You have any special hobbies that have...
Well, I played tennis a lot when I was younger, and I knit, I crochet, I do borgello, I do needlepoint, I do jigsaw puzzles, and I read a lot.
Where are your children today?
Linda lives in Goldensbridge, or Lewisboro it's called. She's married and has 2 children, going to be 5, and one just turned 8. And then Jeffrey, who has passed, has a son and a daughter, and they're in their 20s. One is a social worker, and the other one is looking for a job right now.
Oh,
And then that's what's happening. Yeah.
Stanford was a very different place when you were a child than it is today.
I can remember the railroad track. They weren't railroad tracks, they were trolley car tracks. And I remember the 300th anniversary, they had a spectacular thing with floats and everything. And I remember going to that parade. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Do you think it's a better place when you're growing up, or do you like...
Now it's a big city. You can't compare. I mean, we could walk to town and not worry about it. Never locked our doors. And our house was behind St. Basil's. And so it was easy to walk to town. Didn't take long to walk.
What's the name of the company that your father owned?
M. Gottfried
What is
Inc.
it?
M. Gottfried Incorporated. It's roofing and sheet metal. We do commercial roofing, hospitals, hotels, universities, and shopping
where are they
centers.
located now?
We're on Research Drive in Glenbrook. Yes, and I'm there with my son Jeffrey, who is the president of the company now.
So you're the big chief there.
I'm secretary and treasurer. Yes, and we have 17 roofers and sheet metal men.
And you work just in Stanford or all over?
Oh, no, we go all over. We go into New York, not Manhattan, but now it's New York, and we go all the way up the coast.
You brought some very interesting things to show us.
Yes, I have.
Can we go and look at them?
Yes,
and
of
you can
course.
tell us what they're about?
Sure. This is a picture of my mother at her wedding day, and my mother and father. And this is a very old picture that they put on a metal frame. of mother.
What year was their marriage?
I don't know. This is, my brother Nathan's going to sue me, I'm sure. This is Nathan. It's the only picture I could find. This is, I think this was their engagement picture of my mother and my dad. This is my mother's 4 sisters and a sister-in-law. I don't know where that 5th sister disappeared. This is me. I must have been about 10. And this is me with my twin brother. My mom and dad behind me. My Uncle Dave and his wife Sylvia. And her her daughter behind her with her husband Leon Schrimmer. And my brother Nathan. This is my wedding. My brother Sid, my brother Nat, and Abraham and me. Do you want to go to the up there or what?
Go here.
Well, this is my mother's. This is at my wedding. This is my mother-in-law, and this is her husband. And this gentleman brought them over to the United States with his wife. And this is Zeta, my mother-in-law's father, David, and my son David's named after him.
'54.
Okay.
This is Ava and I, 1954.
Where was that?
That was in the Bronx at, I can't think of the name of the place. It was a hall. We were married at a hall.
Go up here.
Burnside Manor. Burnside Manor. Okay? And this is Nathan, this is Abe's naturalization papers where he became a citizen. And this is his document for being a citizen. This is my mother's, Rose. All right, and this is my dad's.
Okay.
This is a picture from the first anniversary of ORT. Mother was the president and started the organization. She went to Manhattan to find out about it because she was very interested in the immigrants that came over and needed an education and needed work.
What year was that?
Oh, this was, it was right after the war, I think. Second World War.
It's about the First World War?
No.
Second World War.
Second
About
World War.
1948?
Yeah, it was about then. And she learned whatever she needed to, and then she started an organization, and they met at my house. And I was young, and I used to see a lot of women coming in, and I would sit on the steps leading upstairs to hear what was going on, and I would hear the stories about getting people jobs and giving them educations, and that's strictly what they do.
That was a
Rehabilitate.
national organization.
National organization, yes. Yes. She was very proud of that.
Who were the other people?
Can I move it?
Yeah.
Okay. Ruth Epstein, who her husband owned Epstein Tire Company, and this is Mrs. Florence Rosenberg. She owned a tourist house on what street?
Willow Street.
Willow Street. She took in boarders, and they were her first group.
Gloria, you're wearing a necklace that you were telling me about that's very interesting.
This is a real tiger's eye,
Yeah.
and everyone in my family has one. when my kids were going off to sleepaway camp, Linda was going off to sleepaway camp, and we always would take them to the clam box for dinner the night before they left, because they feel kind of, oh, we're leaving home, etc. And it was always, we try to make them happy and have a good time.
The clam box, everybody went
Clam
to the
box,
clam box.
everybody went there. They had great, great fish. And my husband saw things were getting kind of weepy, and we had ordered, pardon the expression, lobster. And he took a lobster and said, oh, isn't this interesting? He took the eye, and he said, and he popped it into his ear, and he said, I can see you no matter where I am. And everyone got hysterical and thought it was so funny. And a few minutes later, he went to take the eye out of his ear, and it wouldn't go. The more he dug, the deeper it went. So I said, I think we have to go to the hospital and have it removed. He said, don't be silly. I'm a businessman. Can you see the headlines? Local businessman has eye in his ear removed from M. Gottfried, Inc. And I said, well, you're going to have to do it. So we went to Stanford Hospital, parked in the emergency lot, and for about a half hour, it took that long to convince him to go inside. And I went in with him, and we went over to the desk, the reception desk, and the nurse looked up and she said, can I help you? And he said, I have an eye in my ear and I need to have it taken out. Well, she looked up and she said, what? She says, I have an eye, and he goes like, I have an eye in my ear. And sure enough, she sees this eye in the ear. So she had to call in an ear, nose, and throat man and have it removed. And ever since then, my husband came home around a month later with one eye. And then, of course, the kids saw it. And then as he got them, they don't do that anymore. You can't get them. I had them framed and put on chains. And whenever we have a special occasion, we all wear the eye without even telling the other one we're going to wear it. Somehow that we look, and there's that eye, and there's Abe.
Gloria, I want to thank you for allowing us to do this interview today at the JCC. And we will have a video for you, which you will be able to have for your records.
Great.
But this will become part of the Jewish archives of the Stanford Jewish Historical Society.
Well, it was my pleasure to be here. Okay?